With the release date of Silksong finally announced, people have been wondering why the sequel has taken 7 years to make. There's a lot of pressure for Silksong to succeed as Steam's most wishlisted game at 4.8 million wishlists. While Team Cherry has publicly said that the reason for the long dev time is fun and that the game is a vehicle for their creativity, that doesn't really paint the full picture. As a game dev who spent 2 years making a platformer, I'm going to dive into the intricacy and effort behind Hollow Knight's design to explain why Silksong could have easily never come out. Take a look at the Hollow Knight map. Since Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania, a genre known for non-linear exploration, i.e. backtracking, and progression that is usually unlocked by gaining skills, a good map is key to player understanding. Looking at these early designs of the Hollow Knight map, you can see how much effort is put in making sure the game design progresses in a nice manner. With each room, you have to designate entrances and exits, which in this image is marked by the white lines along the black lines, where chests are, where bosses are, when the color palette changes, etc. The map needs to tell the story of the game. Hollow Knight was originally meant to be procedurally generated, meaning the layout would have been randomized, but they tossed that out so the world can feel more intentional and meaningful. Firstly, they sketched out how each level would look like. They then blocked the entire world out with black blocks in Unity. Then they started experimenting with how players could interact with each section, revisit certain sections with a new perspective, and to divide the game into different environments. Team Cherry was originally going to have a Bone Forest section of the game that they had to remove due to scope. They added certain sections in for story, like the Blue Lake. After tiling out a room, they playtested it to see how it felt. RA added the art, then the team added the interactable elements, enemies, switches, etc. As a former platformer game dev who wanted to divide the sections of gameplay in a similar manner that Hollow Knight does, I know just how long and iterative this process can be. As the design changes, so does the map. The design you imagined in your head may not make sense once playtested. Deciding the placement of every chest, building, enemy, where skills are unlocked is really difficult. While Team Cherry made the map mostly through intuition, that does not mean it was perfect on first try. A lot of people have speculated that Silksong will be an even bigger game, meaning an even bigger map. Finding a way to string everything together and tell a cohesive story is time-consuming. I really think that this part of game design is what makes good platformers stand out from great platformers. I've seen games with fantastic art and music on a similar quality level as Hollow Knight, but they underperform because the balance of the world is wrong. There are so many other moving parts in Hollow Knight that will also be present in Silksong besides the map, so let's dive into another part of development: art. Take a look at this GIF. This is how many layers it takes to create 10 seconds of gameplay in Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is actually made through layering 2D assets across a 3D scene. Let's take a look at all the steps here. Firstly, Team Cherry hand drew all of the art and animation in Photoshop and saved them as PNGs. That might sound simple, but the design of finalized art assets had to be decided through concept art when they're figuring out the visual style of the game. Looking at this early version of Hollow Knight, then known as Hungry Knight in Newgrounds, you can see how different the game used to look. In this version, it's a top-down perspective, while Hollow Knight is now a side-scroller. Hollow Knight was also animated traditionally, meaning every action taken by the knight, like jumping or attacking, is drawn frame by frame. This form of animation is painstaking and time-consuming. My team also used frame-by-frame animation in the platformer I made. We first drew a rough animation using only line art to mark how the final animation should look. Then we had another animator draw a cleaner version of that line art. Then we had another animator add the colors. There are 149 enemy characters in Hollow Knight, so animating each one must have taken forever. To implement a single animation like jumping, Team Cherry had to upload a sprite sheet, an image containing each frame, to Unity, their game engine. They then used Unity's animation tool to indicate what frame should appear at what time. The process of uploading art to Unity is done multiple times. The vast majority of games use grayboxing, which is when you make a playable rough draft of a level to get a sense of its gameplay before polishing the art. That means they first had to implement early placeholder art before implementing the final assets. Now, Team Cherry is finally in engine after all that work. Many of the art assets have different types of shaders applied to them. A shader is a program that renders how the art looks, like affecting the lighting. Hollow Knight used a diffuse shader in Unity, which can make the art appear lighter or darker depending on where the light source is. They also added particles, which are the specks of dust that float around and appear throughout the game. The next time you play a game, stop and look around. You'll notice that so many games you love have particles, which help make the world feel more alive. You'll also notice particles in moments of action in the game, like when the knight attacks. And that's just the art. Most of this was done by one person, Ari, and let it be known that Team Cherry has a core team of only 3 developers with contractors. While Hollow Knight set the stage for the Silksong art style, there are whole new environments, enemies, and characters to draw, animate, and implement. Of course, Silksong is expected to look just as good, if not even better than Hollow Knight. It makes sense that Team Cherry is spending more time refining character designs and ensuring animations look smooth. The fact that Hollow Knight was finished in only 4 years is quite frankly a miracle. And of course, the team is going to be even more intentional with their designs considering how hyped the sequel is. With how intensive the art pipeline is and the small size of Team Cherry, Silksong could have easily not happened despite the talent of the devs. The fact that it has a release date now is a testament to their endurance. Silksong was originally supposed to be a DLC, but took a life of its own. The devs had so many ideas for this DLC that it became a full-fledged game, and is now the most anticipated title on Steam. I've dived into a couple areas of Hollow Knight to explain why Silksong is taking so long, but there are other disciplines that I haven't even mentioned, like audio and programming. Not to mention, with Hollow Knight, the devs had limited resources, so they had to prioritize scope. With Hollow Knight being a massive success, the developers no longer have to consider scope as much, allowing them to explore new ideas and create more. All of that takes time, which they can now afford. With the long wait for Silksong, many fans are wondering why Team Cherry was silent all of those years. With how iterative the game design process can be, the reason to me is obvious. Devs are constantly changing their game, and Team Cherry did not want to promise something that did not make it to the final build. Before I was a developer, I would play games and speculate how much work they took. It wasn't until I started making games that I understood how many steps there are to create even 10 seconds of gameplay. A beautiful environment you may take a moment to appreciate probably took countless hours, versions, blood, sweat, and pixels. My developer friend told me this once and it really stuck with me. People can forget that a game was delayed. They will never forget if the game was bad. With the amount of work it takes to create a game like Silksong and the pressure to succeed, this is why Team Cherry spent 7 years. And honestly, this is why I think Silksong could have easily never come out. But of course, I'm so glad it is. If you enjoyed my perspective as a game dev, I'm making my own game, which you should totally check out. Lily's World XD is a psychological horror game about investigating a young girl's computer. Read her old conversations with her childhood crush, customize her cringy blog, and look through her photos. Everything seems normal until you find messages addressed to you. Wishlist Lily's World XD on Steam. I have a newsletter with behind-the-scenes updates of my game development. Subscribe and follow me on my other socials. I will see you in the next one.